I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
Last Embrace, one of the most stylish thrillers I've seen in recent years. It's a thoroughly compelling story of a burnout government agent trying to solve one last mystery that threatens his life. Roy Scheider, who I think is one of our finest and most underrated actors, stars as the government agent who's just seen his wife murdered. Later he receives a death threat himself. Apparently trying to help him solve the crime is Janet Margolin, a university student he meets and falls in love with.
You better sort things out with me first.
A great kiss for a thriller. Absolutely no tenderness involved. A fine undercurrent of violence in that scene. Eventually, Roy Scheider begins to think that Janet Margolin may herself be connected to the threats in his life. We're not sure, though. Could be his paranoia. He's so paranoid, which I guess is an occupational hazard for a government agent. He's suspicious of everyone. Late in the film, he makes up his mind, though, that she is out to kill him, and he chases her through the caverns and tunnels of Niagara Falls. Great. Now that's a true cliffhanger. Wonderful scene. In fact, all the scenes at the falls are very, very stylish, great looking, powerful camera movements, and with a pair of superior leading performances by Roy Scheider and Janet Margolin. Last Embrace, a thoroughly entertaining thriller.
Well, Gene, now you once told me that when two critics go to a movie, look at it very seriously, and one loves it and the other hates it, the movie must have something on the ball.
I think it does. I mean, you're saying
okay,
that
well,
you
I'm
didn't
saying this movie must have something on the ball because I hated it as much as you apparently
liked it. I can't
liked
believe that you hated it. There's good acting there that I don't think you can deny.
I didn't hate it in the sense that I thought Phantasm was
No.
total garbage, no, but I felt that it was a very frustrating film to watch.
What's wrong with being frustrated?
I didn't know what the purpose was. The first hour and 15 minutes set up a lot of situations. He's paranoid. He thinks people are following him. Maybe they are following him. Characters are introduced, then they disappear. We're intended, I think, to be frustrated, but I didn't enjoy that experience. And what I enjoyed even less was finding out at the end what everything was all about. If there's anything I cannot stand in a movie, it's that moment when the director points his camera at one of the characters who then has to read about a page and a half of dialogue explaining everything.
Aren't there lots of classic old movies where we get that kind of explanation, and don't you, in some mystery, I know you're a big mystery fan, right? Don't you love it when the guy tells all about it?
Generally speaking, no. I'm like the guy who never reads the last chapter of the Agatha Christie because he doesn't want to know what the solution was. For example, in this one, they get in a car, they drive to Niagara Falls, they get out of the car, they face each other, and they talk. It's the old, you mean to say, yes. As a matter of fact, I
It's done
do.
in a classic
But then,
way.
yes, you're exactly right, and so forth. And the conclusion there, or part of the conclusion, what we saw there at Niagara Falls, that scene, and indeed the entire ending of the film, could never have been made if Alfred Hitchcock had never made films. It's totally derivative. There's no original vision there.
I think it's original. The story is very special. The secret, which we can't reveal, it's very special, very contemporary in a way, aggressive. I think it's intriguing. I liked it from start to finish. Didn't mind being frustrated at any point.
Okay, so we have a very big yes vote from you and a no vote from me, and people are going to have to make up their own minds, I guess. Confidentially, don't go to see it. Let's agree on this one. Let's move on to one that I think we agree on, and I sure think this is one of the best movies of the year. It comes a movie I have a real affection for. It's a slice of American life called Melvin and Howard, and it's an update of that old Horatio or Alger dream where you do a millionaire a favor and he includes you in his will. Well, this time, though, the story is allegedly based on fact. The millionaire is Howard Hughes, and the hero is Melvin Dumar, a Utah gas station operator who's driving his pickup truck through the Nevada desert one morning when he comes across a man who looks like an old tramp. He gives him a lift. Jason Robards plays the old man, Howard Hughes, and Paul Lamont plays Melvin Dumar, who thinks he's a great songwriter.
But he'll be back again next year in his souped-up Santa sleigh.
But he'll be back again next year in his souped-up Santa sleigh.
Hey, that's great, man. Hey, you know what?
What?
You sounded good.
That's a great scene there with those two guys in the cab. It looks like it might be visually boring, you might think, but I was really absorbed in that, and you can see in there, I think, the relationship between those two people. Now, here's what I like best about Melvin and Howard. After that encounter in the desert, the movie forgets all about Howard Hughes for the next hour or so and concentrates instead on the life of its unlikely hero, Melvin Dumar. Melvin goes through 2 marriages, 3 repossessed cars, several jobs, and such major crossroads in his life as being named Milkman of the Month.
Well, what about it, huh? Come on, am I the milkman of the month or not? Yeah, you're the milkman of the month. Get the TV set too? Yeah, you get the set. Well, then go ahead and deduct whatever you want. You know it.
Winning that TV set is nothing because one day Melvin Dumar's life really changes. 7 years after that night in the desert, Howard Hughes dies, and a mysterious last will and testament turns up in Melvin's gas station. Now, if that will is genuine, Dumar stands to inherit $156 million from the Howard Hughes estate. The movie has a field day with what happens next. Melvin and his wife are besieged by long-lost relatives, shyster lawyers, quick-buck artists with overnight propositions to start businesses. And the movie Melvin and Howard is quietly funny and perceptive as it turns the American dream inside out.
You know what I loved about this picture? I expected it to be an examination of whether or not Melvin Dumar in reality ever met Howard Hughes, and is the Mormon will real?
And who cares?
This film is really, as you called it, a slice of life. They forget that stuff pretty much. It is really just an investigation of what this sort of middle American character is all about, all the products he's involved in, and what his life is like. It's delightful. I think that really sets the scale of this picture. It's a small little film, but absolutely delightful in every single performance.
It shows a lot of imagination on the part of the screenwriter, Bo Goldman, who started out with the story, and then Jonathan Demme directed it. Then instead of turning it into a courtroom drama, which would have been terribly boring with what the witnesses said and who was lying and what the evidence was and what the lawyer said, instead they have that at the end for a little bit, and at the beginning they have him meeting Howard Hughes. Then they expand the middle. 7 years in between. How did this guy live? If you have ever wondered what happens to the contestants on The Price is Right, you know, when they're not, go for the refrigerator, this is the story of what those people do the rest of the time. It's a fascinating,
just delightful. The film has gotten tremendous praise from critics across the country. I hope people don't walk in thinking it's Gone with the Wind or something like that. A small scale, absolutely lovely film.
Right.
Our next film is Swing Shift, Goldie Hawn's latest picture, and it's a curious production, full of fine performances and a film that leaves you wanting more at several crucial moments. Goldie Hawn plays a typical housewife in 1941, but after Pearl Harbor is bombed, her husband goes off to fight the war in the Pacific, and her life is radically changed. Because against her husband's wishes, she begins working as a riveter in a Santa Monica airplane factory, and she is exposed there to the outside world of work and single men on the prowl.
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks.
I'm going to watch you for a while, because when you get nervous, you can hurt yourself.
Okay, thank you. Come on. Are you all right?
That was Kurt Russell as her friendly boss, and he keeps hitting on Goldie for a date and for a romance for nearly 2 years. And by a New Year's Eve party in 1944, she has all but forgotten about her husband while she is in the arms of Kurt Russell.
Oh, I wish it could be like this forever.
Why not?
That scene with its drawn-out beginning and just a smidgen of emotion at the end there is typical of the whole movie, which is long on period decor and dress and short sometimes on emotion. The film is very well acted, including an especially nice performance by Christine Lottie as one of Goldie Hawn's co-workers. But too often, we want more from this movie, more of a reason for her taking up with Kurt Russell, more of a reaction from her husband when he eventually learns of their affair. At times, Swing Shift almost seems afraid of its subject, so I give it a mixed review.
In other words, you think the film should be painted with broader strokes and everybody should have bigger and louder and more emotional reactions?
No, I wouldn't do it.
Well, that's exactly what you said.
No, I wouldn't do it trashy like you're suggesting, but here's what I would say. That if you have a woman who's a traditional housewife, and if this film is about the birth of women's lib and the way women change, then I want to hone right in on that decision. Why this guy? Why this decision with this guy at this time?
But that's fascinating. If it's about how women change, which it is. It starts at Pearl Harbor, it ends at the end of the war. It's about women who go to work for the first time and learn to think about themselves as individuals. If it's about how women change, then why are you so interested in why she leaves her husband and goes off with this guy when the central relationship in the movie is her friendship with Christine Lottie? That's the most important one. At the beginning of the movie, she thinks Christine Lottie is a tramp because she goes out with a nightclub owner. She's a nice little housewife. At the end of this movie, they found sisterhood. They found friendship. They can respect each other as individuals. The last shot of the movie doesn't have her hugging her husband or her lover. It has her hugging her new friend, and I think that's extremely important. And that's the discovery that goes on in this movie, not your desire that the husband play another one of these spurned and jilted scenes, or that the lover explain something about why he's so desirable.
No, I think that if you're going to have her make this key decision, I think people want to know, at least this person wanted to know, why she goes for this guy. In other words, the movie is taking some interesting an interesting look at this time, and I think it would be a better film if it didn't just have sort of this cute meat where she punches him with the drill.
See,
and
that's
then,
not...
I think that's what it is. I think it's movie liking rather than a real life.
Her decision to have an affair was not a key decision in the movie. It's just going by the ropes. Everybody else is having affairs. The key decision in the movie is for her to learn to think about other women in a different way.
That's one of the decisions.
Sure, her husband's in the Navy for 4 years, and she has an affair. That's something that, that's
a lot of time is devoted. A lot of time of the picture is devoted to that.
And a lot of time is devoted to the other one too. I think that what you're doing is you're saying this didn't give me what I wanted. But
I give it a mixed review. I like the part with the woman.
I give it a thumbs up.
Okay.
That's what I give it. And next week at the movies, or this week, or next at the movies, or coming up next.
The Talking Heads are a new wave band with a sort of a mid-Atlantic accent. They play rock and roll all right, but if you listen, you can also hear reggae and gospel and even a little country and western music. You can hear all of that in their terrific new concert film named Stop Making Sense. This is pretty much a standard rock concert film, but I don't mean that to sound negative. After all, what can you do? You've got the band on stage, the audience out in front, the choreography of the singers and the cameras, and that's pretty basic as far as the ingredients go. What makes one concert film better than another is the quality of the performance. And here is David Byrne, the Talking Heads lead singer, in an incredible burst of energy. And this looks like an aerobics class. Yeah. I mean, at one point he starts running around the stage. Yeah. Enormous energy, enormous goodwill, a lot of joy in the music, and a lot of power in the music. Makes it into a real good film. I think you can see right there what makes the movie so special. The music is very powerful. It's a driving force. And the way that Byrne and his backup singers throw themselves into the physical side of the performance is absolutely exhilarating. There are also some interesting visuals in the film. The Talking Heads use a lot of handheld lights to create giant shadows on the screens behind them, and in Stop Making Sense, those light and shadow shows are coordinated so well with the music, this becomes not just a musical film, but the record of a real theatrical event.
I think you put your finger right on it. I think that getting close to this guy and his group is very important. The other way you can go in a rockumentary is go take them backstage, and you can do investigations, and Martin Scorsese did that a little bit
and show the audience a lot
in the Last Waltz. Here is a fabulous performer, and so we're really tight on him an awful lot, or tight on his work. And it's so exhilarating that the film absolutely takes you over. I mean, you get in there, the movie starts, and he doesn't let you stop. He's off stage, I think, for one song there.
Yeah, it's fabulous.
I don't know how he physically does it. I mean,
I want to go see the Talking Heads in concert. I really do.
And I didn't know them very well before I knew the name.
Now, you mentioned Scorsese, who did the band. This movie was by Jonathan Demme, the man who made Melvin and Howard. There's a whole genre of good directors who make rock concert films. Also, Michael Ritchie did the Bette Midler film. Yeah. And you could go on and on. This is one of the best concert films I've seen because the cameras are right there, and you get the idea of the physical continuity of the performance, which you wouldn't get with a lot of cutting to the audience and backstage.
I also think that he doesn't have the disdain for the audience that I see in some rock performers. I always get the feeling with a lot of rock performers that they really don't like the audience. Here,
the Talking Heads smile.
Yeah, they enjoy.
They don't come out and they're not scornful and bored, which is often the stage persona of rock performance.
Okay, coming up next at the movies.
Something Wild is like a daydream that turns into a bizarre nightmare. The movie opens with a man trying to walk out on his check in a restaurant, and that little streak of lawlessness intrigues the woman who follows him out onto the sidewalk, and she invites him into her car, and she looks pretty, and he says, gee, that's great, and that's when their wild ride begins, a ride that we saw the beginnings of in that first clip. This woman really is something wild. She handcuffs the guy. She has him lie to the office about why he won't be back that afternoon. She seduces him in a cheap motel, and after they start to like one another, she takes him to her high school reunion where his worst dream comes true. He meets a man that he works with at the office.
Well, I had to take his name for the baby's sake.
You're having his child?
I think it's his child.
That's still Melanie Griffith, this time without her black wig. They meet somebody else at that reunion, the woman's husband and former partner in crime who's just gotten out of prison. And of course, he sees right through their marriage masquerade.
Now, I know you two can't really be married.
But of course the guy doesn't have a real wife and 2 real children, or at least he's not still married to them, because everybody in this movie is lying at some level or another. The whole movie is mostly about those 3 people. Jeff Daniels as the ordinary guy, Melanie Griffith as the wild woman, and a newcomer, Ray Liotta, as her tough husband. All very good performances. The movie begins as a comedy, but then it builds in suspense as the husband forces them both to come along with him on a violent crime spree. And actually, I thought that was the least interesting part of this movie, because the dynamics of the man-woman relationship at the beginning of the film was a lot more fun than the action at the end. The movie was directed by Jonathan Demme, who made the slice-of-life masterpiece Melvin and Howard, and I think he's best when he sticks to character and human comedy and doesn't go for just stereotyped action. But still, Something Wild is a wonderful offbeat movie that keeps bringing one surprise after another, and I liked it.
I liked it too, and it didn't bother me that it went off into dangerous land, because if you play with fire, you get burned, and that's what a little bit of this film is about. I thought that this actually, with all the violence and the rough language which you could hear missing from that scene, I felt that this was a very traditional Hollywood kind of movie that would have been made in the 30s and 40s, in the sense that it's perfect. There isn't a scene there that rings false.
Yeah.
When they're on the run, you don't know what's going to happen. How many movies do we see, Roger, where you really don't know what's going to happen? And this movie had me just glancing about.
Yeah,
it really did fool me, honestly.
In a way, it could play in a double bill with It Happened One Night with Gable and Lombard.
A violent one.
Right. It has that feeling of Hollywood tradition to it.
Does.
It's well made, it's funny, it moves fast, and Jonathan Demme, once again, he can do everything. His last movie was Stop Making Sense, a concert film.
And this Jeff Daniels, he's quiet about himself, but boy, he turns in one good one after another, terms of endearment, and now this.
Gable and Colbert, by the way.
Okay.
I said the wrong people.
Okay.
Our next movie is named Married to the Mob, and this is the new comedy by Jonathan Demme, whose recent movies have included the strange and entertaining Something Wild and the offbeat one-man monologue Swimming to Cambodia. This time he tells the story of a mafia wife, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, whose husband is a hitman for the mob. Now, there are times when she gets tired of their mafia lifestyle.
I want a normal life. I'm sick and tired of the gambling, the guns, bailing you out of jail, never knowing when you're going to come home, if you're going to come home.
That's Alec Baldwin as Pfeiffer's husband, Frank, who is nicknamed the Cucumber for a variety of reasons. The movie also has some fun with the personal style of the mob boss, played by Dean Stockwell. A motel tryst later that night will lead to Frank the Cucumber's murder, and when the mob boss gets ideas that he might be just the man to comfort the new widow, his wife, played by Mercedes Ruehl, warns Pfeiffer to keep her hands off.
You better call it off, because if I ever catch you two together,
And Mercedes Ruehl is terrific in this film. Meanwhile, one of the FBI guys following Pfeiffer begins to fall for her, and he is played by Matthew Modine.
Oh, God, don't stop. That feels great. Can't remember the last time a man touched me below the waist. Huh? I can't believe I said that.
The movie's climax has everybody in Miami Beach with the mafia boss suspecting that Pfeiffer may have led the FBI right to him. Married to the Mob has a lot of big laughs in it, especially in that very good last scene. But for a movie, it's kind of disjointed, and it never really seems to develop the comic tension that it needs. It seems to be a series of isolated moments and small little gags over on the side and little cutaways to funny little small things, while the main line of the story kind of gets neglected. There are 2 very good performances in the movie by Dean Stockwell as the mafia boss and by Mercedes Ruehl as his wife. But I was disappointed by Michelle Pfeiffer as the heroine, because she didn't bring much comic energy to the role. She seemed more like a bystander, an acted-upon person. And I was baffled by the way Matthew Modine's role was written. His role was so goofy and so unfocused, you never knew what to think about him. The movie starts with a good idea, but I think it grows self-indulgent.
I had a similar reaction to the picture. I enjoyed, when she says about everything in our life fell off the back of a truck, I am with this movie, and I am laughing, and the premise is great. As it develops, there are characters that I liked, and I will recommend the film, but I'm recommending it with a warning that it falls steadily downhill. I think that when you blame Pfeiffer's performance, I think it's the way the character is written. I think the film just spins off into including too many elements. I don't know what happens there. I think it could have stayed tighter with her and the mafia boss. I just think that there's too many things that he's trying to throw in this picture.
Well, it seems to me that, in a way, her character, then if it is her character, not her performance, is too passive. She doesn't really like being married to the mob. She doesn't like the fact that the mob boss is chasing her. But she isn't kind of a gutsy person who really wants to take control of things. She allows everyone to sweep her along.
She should have been, here she's been living in a tough life, and she's going to be tough enough to break out of the tough life. Then she should be tough enough to have the movie be about her character and how she fends and
because in a way, the mob boss's wife, Mercedes Rule, is the person who, if they'd taken that strength of character and put it in the central role, would have been a different movie.
That's Jodie Foster as an FBI trainee on the trail of a serial killer in The Silence of the Lambs, a depressingly brutal thriller that I found completely lacking in redemptive quality. So I sat there thinking, why are all these talented people involved in this project? Oscar winner Jodie Foster works for an FBI boss who apparently believes that it takes one to know one, and so she pays a visit to another serial killer to track one. First, she is warned to stay clear of him.
Do not touch the glass. Do not approach the glass. You can't see nothing but soft paper. No pencils or pens. No staples or paper clips in his paper.
Both killers have cheap nicknames. The one she is looking for is nicknamed Buffalo Bill. Anthony Hopkins stars as her source of information, the frightening Dr. Hannibal the Cannibal Lecter, who likes to eat his victims' body parts.
I'm offering you a psychological profile of Buffalo Bill.
There is a sporting quality to this story that I found distasteful as Foster again visits with Hannibal the Cannibal.
What is your worst memory of childhood?
Eventually, Silence of the Lamb degenerates into a standard monster-in-the-house movie as Foster catches up with Buffalo Bill in his dungeon-like home where a young woman is held captive and terrorized in a well. The horrors of female abuse are too much with us, I think, now to be trifled with anymore in the movies. We had this complaint about the picture involving Julia Roberts. I have it again here. I didn't learn a thing about serial killers from this movie. A much more honest, less exploitive film on the same subject was last year's Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. By contrast, The Silence of the Lambs is a star-studded freak show directed by the usually enormously talented Jonathan Demme, who I think for the first time in his career has picked a surprisingly trashy project.
Well, this is a tough film to review because, of course, in terms of its subject matter, one can easily target it as you have. And also, I think that the ending doesn't really work. Once she gets into the house of Buffalo Bill, it does become a standard who's behind this door, who's going to jump on me from the shadows. The first part of this film, though, Gene, is terrifically effective, partially because of the real tension, the dynamic interaction between Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins. It's one of the most peculiar and fascinating relationships I've seen in a movie in a long time. Hopkins is very good here. Foster is very good here. The dialogue is at a very high level of intelligence, and the movie works not perhaps in the same way as Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, but effectively. And I think that you're really shortchanging a lot of skill and craft and art that went into this film.
No, you know, sometimes you say, I think you blew it on this one. I think you're being too easy on this picture in this way. He is presented, the Anthony Hopkins character, is presented as this big evil thing, and we're going down there to see them, a journey into hell and all that. And frankly, he was so pumped up, and the music was so pumped up at such a high level that I
worked for me. It worked.
Well, then you're easy, because for me, I thought, oh, come on. A guy who's truly frightening doesn't need, you know, a huge organ playing in the background. I didn't buy it at all.
This is the movies. What did you want? A documentary, black and white, television, shoot it on videotape?
No, the reason why Henry, the Portrait of a Serial Killer works is because these people, my intuition, I don't have any first-hand knowledge, these people tend to be kind of dull.
Well, they're two different kinds of movies, and you're using one to criticize the other.
Yes, we always do that, Roger. We say better pictures of the same subject.
Why can't you criticize this on its own terms instead of saying what it is?
I'm criticizing on its own terms. I wasn't compelled by anybody except, I suppose, the Jodie Foster character as a strong woman.
Come on, a great performance.
Not a great performance, a decent performance. She's
Anthony Hopkins, great.
I thought that was way overplayed.
A senior partner in his law firm notices a telltale mark on the forehead of a lawyer played by Tom Hanks there in that scene from Jonathan Demme's new film, Philadelphia. The senior man guesses correctly that it's Kaposi sarcoma, a skin disease associated with AIDS, and suddenly Hanks is fired from the firm where he thought he was highly regarded.
Some people think you have an attitude problem, Beckett.
Really?
This is, of course, blatant discrimination, and when his old law partners start pretending he was incompetent, Hanks decides to sue. Most of the law firms in Philadelphia won't take his case. They don't want to make powerful enemies. But Hanks finally finds a lawyer who will represent him. He's played by Denzel Washington as the kind of flashy personal injury expert who advertises on television.
I misplaced an important complaint. That's their story.
How many lawyers you go to before you call me?
9.
It's a cliche in AIDS stories that the patient's family is intolerant and bigoted, but it's a cliche this movie avoids, as in this scene where the dying man and his lover, played by Antonio Banderas, are at home with Hanks's family. Joan Woodward plays the mother, and her speech to her son is one of the movie's quietest but most effective moments.
I didn't raise my kids to sit in the back of the bus.
Mary Steenburgen plays the defense attorney for the law firm, which claims Hanks couldn't have been fired for having AIDS because he kept it a secret. Hanks makes his own most effective witness.
What I loved the most about the law? Yes.
Philadelphia is being billed as Hollywood's first movie about AIDS with a big budget and big stars. Right. Tom Hanks is very good in this movie, embodying all the humanity of the character without resorting to tear-jerking tricks, and I think he's sure to get an Oscar nomination. But the screenplay itself, I think, could have been a little better. Somehow, once the story gets into the courtroom, the truth and spontaneity of the earlier scenes gets absorbed into the old and familiar patterns of courtroom drama. Still, it's a powerful film.
I had the exact same reaction as you, that Hanks's character is compelling, but the courtroom story is really sort of hack. And it's a shame that he's put through it. I do recommend the film for one thing that Jonathan Demme does. I think if there's a visual strategy and image to this film, it's Demme saying, let's look at AIDS in close-up. Here are the sores. Look at me. Because I think that what AIDS victims must feel, among many other things, obviously they're going to die, is that people won't look at them. They won't even acknowledge them. And so his camera is used to pan down the face, pan down the body. Here it is. Look at it. Look at it. I'm a human being, and that's the strength of the film.
That whole part of the film, and I'm serious when I said that Joan Woodward, who's on the screen very briefly, has two moments of incredible power. The part involving his family, the part involving his lover, the part involving the way he's treated by people is so much more important than just the structure of the courtroom. Who's going to win the case?
Yes.
We don't really care, or we know.
We know, we know, and the arguments are with the exception of a couple of big speeches, seemingly impromptu speeches by Denzel Washington. Other than that,
there's one nice touch, and that's when the Mary Steenburgen character whispers to her colleague, "I hate this case."
Yeah.
Beloved, based on the novel by Nobel Prize winner Toni Morrison, is a film that circles around the pain at the heart of its story, the fact that Setha, the runaway slave played by Oprah Winfrey, killed her baby daughter rather than have the child be returned to slavery. Now years have passed and Setha is free, but the ghost of the dead girl still haunts her home. And when a friend from the old days, Paul D., played by Danny Glover, enters her home, he senses a supernatural being.
Good God, girl. What kind of evil you got in there?
It ain't evil. Just sad. Come on.
Paul D.'s presence seems to quiet the evil in the house where Setha lives with her daughter, Denver, played by Kimberly Elise. The adults talk about the plantation where they met, named Sweet Home.
How come everybody who run off from Sweet Home can't stop talking about it? Looks like if it was so sweet, you wouldn't have run away.
Girl, who you think you talking to?
True. She right, Setha. It wasn't sweet. It sure wasn't home.
Then another visitor arrives at the house, Beloved, played by Tandy Newton. At first, her identity is a mystery, but Beloved and Denver bond like sisters, which in a way, they are.
You won't ever leave us, will you?
No, never. This is where I am.
Toni Morrison says it took her 3 viewings to fully appreciate Beloved, and I know what she meant. This is a film constructed out of the fragments of memory and experience, and if you haven't read the book, you'll have trouble at first understanding the story. The movie was directed by Jonathan Demme, who uses wonderful performances and an overarching supernatural mood to create his effects. The ads, of course, try to package the story as uplifting, almost cheerful, but it's very dark. The painful aftermath of the greatest sin in our nation's history. It's a strong, original film.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And you mentioned that it took Toni Morrison 3 viewings to appreciate the picture. Well, it took me 2. But especially after the second viewing, I was mightily impressed with this film in a variety of ways. As an historical document about the Reconstruction era,
during which the horror of slavery was still very much alive, even though the slaves had been freed, and also as a tribute to generations of pioneer women in the African American community. And their ability to keep their families together is summed up in a beautiful speech that also shows Winfrey's ability to be a ferociously powerful actress.
I got a tree on my back. I will never run from another thing on this earth.
Hers, I think, is a complete performance as she displays a range in this picture from maternal tenderness to wounded victim to hopeful lover. Thumbs up for her and for director Jonathan Demme's distinctive Beloved.
Oh, I agree with you, Gene, about Oprah Winfrey's performance, and I think all the performances are good, and the most interesting in a way is what Thandie Newton does with Beloved, because she's basically, and we don't want to give away the whole story, but she's basically a stranger to the body that she occupies, and a stranger to speech and to relationships, and that alien quality that comes across is very effective. And this is a really complex and interesting movie. You know, it does justice to the novel, which was also complex and weaved around, because in a way, the central character, Sethe, can hardly touch that event that her whole life revolves around. She can't even touch it in memory. And so the movie revolves around it instead of leading up to it and coming down after it. And when you see it, when the movie is over, you understand everything. But during the experience, sometimes you're at sea.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. But you know, now we talk about epic pictures. When we use that phrase, it usually means a physical landscape, you know, Lawrence of Arabia, the classic epic. But this is a human epic, and I don't mean to be being glib with that, but really, this whole time, place, world experience we're given.
You can easily see how this could have been turned into material that would be much less challenging and much less textured, and it wouldn't have been as good a film.
We may not have given Demme enough credit. This is one of the great directors, and it is a beautiful-looking film.
And also the writer, Richard LaGravenese, who took the novel and some earlier drafts of the screenplay and shaped it into this final form for Demme.